Some films fade into obscurity because they failed at the box office. Others vanish simply because no one bothered to preserve them. But the titles you're about to see disappeared for a different reason quietly, without public explanation, as if someone preferred they never reached the rest of the world. They weren't banned for violence. They weren't pulled for explicit content. They weren't censored for political messages. Yet when it came time for international release, entire regions stepped back, canceled screenings, or simply pretended the films didn't exist. What these movies share isn't controversy, it's the questions they force us to ask. Can reality be rewritten? Can memory be engineered? Can collective thought be shaped without anyone noticing? These are 15 science fiction films that slipped through the cracks of global distribution not because they were dangerous, but because they were uncomfortable. Let's uncover the forgotten. 1. Threads. Threads is less a film than a wound. It depicts a nuclear war not as spectacle but as a slow-motion erasure of humanity. Set in Sheffield, the story follows ordinary families who are thrust into unimaginable horror as global tensions ignite into full-scale atomic devastation. Buildings crumble, communications collapse, and society disintegrates in real time. But the film's true power lies in the years that follow. Unlike most nuclear dramas, Threads refuses catharsis. It traces the long-term consequences: famine, disease, radiation poisoning, and the breakdown of language itself. Children born after the nuclear winter grow up feral, traumatized, and cognitively stunted. Civilization doesn't rebuild, it dissolves. Though critically acclaimed in the UK, the film was handled cautiously abroad. The BBC's initial international distribution plan stalled. Australia refused to air it. The United States relegated it to late-night public television with minimal promotion. Many countries purchased airing rights, but ultimately shelved the film, citing its disturbing realism. The truth is simpler. Threads is terrifying not because of what it shows, but because of how plainly it shows it. There are no sensationalist shots, no melodrama, only the relentless logic of consequences. It left audiences unable to speak, unable to sleep, unable to deny the fragility of their entire world. Some films frighten through imagination. Threads frightens through inevitability. 2. The Apple. The Apple presents a future drenched in neon color and amplified music, where pop culture has become the primary tool of social control. Set in a stylized 1994, the film follows two young musicians, Bibi and Alfie, who are tempted and eventually entrapped by the BIM Corporation, a record label turned authoritarian regime. Through catchy anthems and glittering spectacles, BIM sells not entertainment but obedience. The story's campy visuals hide a razor-sharp allegory. Every beat, every contract, every performance is a form of indoctrination. Citizens are required to wear BIM's signature stickers. Music becomes a ritual. Dissenters are shamed or absorbed into the system. Even the promise of fame is revealed to be a leash, one that tightens with every public appearance. While the film became a cult oddity in the United States, its international distribution faltered immediately. Germany and Italy never pushed for theatrical circulation. Latin American broadcasters rejected it without providing technical or cultural justification. Many regions labeled it too strange or inappropriate, though it contains no explicit content. The problem wasn't its weirdness, it was its blunt critique that mass entertainment can function as a soft dictatorship, shaping desires and identities until people no longer question who controls the music guiding their lives. The ending, in which a divine figure appears to remove the protagonists from a corrupted Earth, only deepened its reputation for being too symbolic, too allegorical, too unpredictable for mainstream release. Beneath the glitter, the Apple warns that pop can be prophecy. People just weren't ready to listen. 3. Until the End of the World. Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World begins as a globe-spanning chase movie and transforms into something far more introspective, a meditation on memory, desire, and the hypnotic power of recorded experience. The story follows Claire, a restless traveler who becomes entangled with Sam, a fugitive carrying a device that can capture the visual experiences of the human mind. Originally created to help the blind see, the machine becomes a temptation, a way to relive dreams, regrets, obsessions. As characters fall deeper into the machine's influence, they become addicted to their own internal images, staring into screens for hours, even days, ignoring the world collapsing around them. The film shifts from adventure to psychological decay, portraying a future where people retreat into personal archives rather than confront reality. Despite a limited theatrical release, The full-length version, nearly 5 hours long, was withheld from international broadcast for decades. Networks only aired the drastically shortened cut, stripping the film of its thematic weight. Many countries dismissed the original version as too long, but critics later argued the real discomfort came from its predictive nature, a world drowning in screens, where people choose isolation over connection. Its fragmented release history gave it an almost mythic reputation. Some viewers believed the uncut film didn't exist at all. In the end, Until the End of the World feels less like science fiction and more like prophecy, one that quietly came true. 4. The Quiet Earth. In The Quiet Earth, a man named Zach Hobson awakens to a world emptied of people. Cities lie intact, lights still glow, and machines hum as though waiting, but every human being has vanished. The film begins like a classic last man alive story, yet quickly reveals something far stranger. Zach is not merely isolated, he is entangled in the aftermath of an experiment that tampered with the structure of reality itself. As he wanders the ghost-like remnants of society, Zach's psychological unraveling becomes a central focus. He speaks to mannequins, reenacts political speeches, and oscillates between terror and euphoria. When he eventually encounters 2 other survivors, their presence raises more questions than answers. Why are they alive? Why them specifically? And what did Zach's role in the mysterious energy project, Project Flashlight, truly cause? Though warmly received in New Zealand and English-speaking territories, the film's distribution in Eastern Europe and several regions of Asia was unexpectedly blocked. Official explanations cited confusion over its ending or concerns about its existential tone, but those reasons never quite explained the abrupt cancellations. The film proposes a universe that can malfunction a world where human science pushes a button it doesn't understand. And when the fabric of creation tears, the result is neither divine judgment nor alien invasion, but a quiet rewiring of existence. Some apocalypses are loud. This one whispers. Cinque Privilege. Privilege envisions a Britain where pop culture is weaponized by the government, turning a beloved rock singer, Stephen Shorter, into a tool for mass emotional manipulation. Presented as a faux documentary, the film blends satire with authoritarian dread, as Stephen's image is used to steer public sentiment from nationalism to religious fervor, all engineered by state and corporate interests. Stephen's performances are grand, theatrical, and increasingly unsettling, designed not to entertain but to hypnotize. Behind the scenes, he is stripped of identity, agency, and humanity, becoming less a musician than a political instrument calibrated to influence millions. His eventual psychological breakdown serves as the film's bleak heart, the moment he realizes he never belonged to himself. Although produced by Universal, Privilege was quietly kept out of U.S. theaters. Several European countries, including West Germany and Spain, refused distribution entirely. No official ban, no public controversy. Yet the film vanished from catalogs as though someone feared its implications. And what implications they were: that celebrity can be crafted, deployed, and reprogrammed for state control, and that the public might willingly embrace a charismatic figure without realizing they are being conditioned. The film contains no shocking violence or explicit content. What it exposes, however, is the blueprint of propaganda through entertainment, a message too sharp for comfort in any era. Millions cheer for Stephen Shorter. Only he understands he is the cage. 6. Death Watch. Death Watch imagines a society so desensitized that dying becomes a commodity. In a future where medical science has nearly eradicated terminal illness, genuine death is rare enough to be valuable entertainment. A television network, eager for ratings, implants a hidden camera into the eye of a journalist named Roddy, played by Harvey Keitel. His task is both simple and monstrous. Follow a terminally ill woman, Catherine, and record her final weeks without her knowledge. What makes the film chilling is its lack of exaggeration. There are no futuristic gadgets, no dystopian armies, just a world that has quietly normalized voyeurism. Every moment of Catherine's suffering becomes potential content, a spectacle shaped for public consumption. Roddy's internal conflict grows as the boundary between observation and exploitation collapses. Despite being filmed in English with international appeal, Death Watch encountered strange distribution gaps. It was sparsely shown in North America, barely released in the Middle East, and slowly faded from European circulation. Censors rarely gave reason. Networks simply passed on it as though the story reflected a media landscape they didn't want mirrored back at them. The discomfort comes from its accuracy. It predicts reality television, influencer culture, and the monetization of private pain with unnerving clarity. It suggests that the erosion of empathy isn't a future threat, it's a process already happening. Catherine's death isn't the tragedy. The tragedy is that millions want front row seats. 7. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing Lasts Forever is one of the strangest sci-fi curiosities ever, made a film that feels like a dream someone tried to suppress. Shot in black and white with touches of surreal comedy, it follows a young artist named Adam who fails an aptitude test and is reassigned to traffic control in a future New York ruled by the Port Authority. Creativity is regulated, careers are assigned, and personal expression is viewed as a malfunction. Adam eventually discovers an underground society of wanderers who secretly control access to the moon, a place portrayed not as a scientific frontier but as a sanctuary for lost souls. The film blends satire, dystopia, and magical realism into something impossible to categorize. That uncategorizable nature may be why it never saw proper release. Turner Broadcasting abruptly canceled its television premiere in 1984. Warner Brothers withheld it from theaters. For decades, the film remained locked away, circulating only through whispered rumors and occasional festival appearances. International distribution never materialized. Even regions normally open to experimental cinema passed on it without explanation. The film contains no offensive content. What it does contain is a destabilizing idea that an entire society can be built on arbitrary rules and that escaping it requires imagination more than rebellion. Adam's journey is not against a tyrant, but against a system that values order over humanity. Stranger still, despite featuring Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, the film remained hidden for over 30 years, reappearing only briefly online before disappearing once more. Some films get lost. Nothing Lasts Forever feels like it was deliberately misplaced. 8. Memoirs of a Survivor. In Memoirs of a Survivor, the world does not collapse through explosions or invasions, it simply unravels. Society fades like a dying light bulb, flickering into disorder without a single defining blow. Julie Christie plays a woman living alone in a decaying flat, watching the outside world transform from unstable to unrecognizable. Her apartment becomes both a shelter and a prison as the streets fill with desperate youths, abandoned children, and fragments of authority pretending they still matter. She records everything in her journal, but her writing soon blurs with visions of another life, or perhaps another timeline. She witnesses scenes that feel half memory, half hallucination, rooms shifting, people appearing and vanishing, walls opening like portals into an emotional archive. Whether these experiences are supernatural or psychological is left unresolved, and that ambiguity becomes the film's haunting center. Though released in the UK, the film avoided wide international distribution. The US never screened it in theaters. Many Asian territories rejected it as too opaque. Others noted its lack of clear resolution, as if ambiguity itself was dangerous. But the real reason may be subtler. The film depicts collapse, not as a dramatic event, but as a slow, indifferent erosion. There are no villains, no political messages, no explosive turning points, just a portrait of a civilization quietly giving up. It mirrors the kind of societal decline governments least want audiences to imagine. One without warning, one without resistance, one that feels all too possible. Memoirs of a Survivor isn't about surviving destruction. It's about surviving the silence after destruction has already happened. 9. Panic in Year Zero. Panic in Year Zero begins with a quiet morning on the way to a family vacation, but peace evaporates the moment a nuclear explosion devastates Los Angeles. The film avoids spectacle. There are no dramatic mushroom clouds, only panic transmitted through broken radio updates and the terrified reactions of ordinary people who realize, all at once, that civilization has no spine. Ray Milland's character, Harry, transforms from a mild-mannered father into a hardened survivalist. His decisions grow harsher with each encounter on the road. He steals, threatens, and kills, not out of hatred, but out of a desperate instinct to protect those he loves. His son, exposed to this new reality, learns violence faster than he learns fear. While seen in the US as a sober warning about the fragility of society, the film encountered quiet resistance in several European markets. France and Belgium declined broadcast. East Germany refused importation. Official reasons cited emotional impact and social instability, but the movie contains nothing graphic. What disturbed foreign distributors was the narrative's moral collapse. The idea that ordinary citizens, not governments or soldiers, would become the true danger after catastrophe. Instead of heroism, Panic in Year Zero offers decay, the erosion of ethics not over generations, but in a matter of days. The film doesn't blame the bomb. It blames what people become when structure disappears. 10. Quintet. In Quintet, the world has already ended not with fire, but with cold. Civilization lies buried beneath relentless snow, and the last remnants of humanity gather in a frozen, abandoned city where survival is more ritual than purpose. Paul Newman's character, Essex, arrives seeking hope, but discovers a society fixated on one obsession, a mysterious board game known as Quintet. This is no pastime. It is a competition whose losers are killed and whose winners gain nothing except the privilege of staying alive a little longer. The game becomes a metaphor for existence itself, arbitrary, cruel, and shrinking with every passing round. As Essex attempts to understand this deadly obsession, he finds himself pulled into a circle where strategy replaces morality and detachment becomes a survival skill. While the film received a limited release in the United States, its international distribution became strangely fractured. Several Nordic countries refused to screen it despite its cold weather aesthetic. France removed promotional campaigns with no explanation. Japan, known for embracing arthouse sci-fi, simply shelved the film indefinitely. The most common criticism abroad was that the movie was philosophically bleak. But beneath that euphemism lies the real discomfort. Quintet rejects the notion of a hopeful future. It suggests not only the extinction of human life, but the extinction of meaning, the idea that when everything collapses, people might cling to any structure, even a senseless game, to distract themselves from the truth of their demise. The film doesn't portray monsters or tyrants. It portrays emptiness and humanity, trying to make rules inside it. 11. The Final Program. Part psychedelic odyssey, part apocalyptic prophecy, The Final Program follows Jerry Cornelius, a scientist drifting through a world collapsing from its own contradictions. He pursues a mysterious microfilm believed to contain the blueprint for humanity's next evolutionary leap. But the journey that follows abandons simple logic for a dreamlike chaos that reflects society's spiritual decay. The film presents a future where culture, identity, and ethics have all dissolved into stylized noise. Characters move through strange laboratories, decadent ruins, and surreal cult gatherings. The ultimate revelation is both shocking and symbolic. A perfect being, neither male nor female, emerges from a forced fusion of two humans. It represents a new model of existence, one unbound by the limitations of the old world. In the United States, the film became a niche curiosity. Internationally, it fared far worse. Spain refused distribution under concerns of ideological ambiguity. South Korea and Saudi Arabia reportedly found its themes improper. But the film contains no explicit content. Its danger lies in implication that the next stage of humanity might not be human at all, and might not be chosen by us. Director Robert Fuest never again received backing for a sci-fi project of this scale. Critics debated its meaning, but audiences never had the chance. The film's disappearance from many regions feels less like commercial miscalculation and more like discomfort with its existential boldness. Some stories warn of endings. The Final Program warns of replacements. 12. Welcome to Blood City. Welcome to Blood City opens with a group of strangers waking up in a sun-soaked frontier town, but the Old West they find themselves in behaves more like a psychological trap than a historical setting. None of them remember how they arrived. None of them know why they're there. And before they can orient themselves, they are informed of a single rule: kill or be removed from the game. Citizenship, survival, identity, everything depends on one's ability to eliminate others. But the violence is only a surface layer. The deeper truth is that the town is a simulation designed by unseen authorities. Every moral hesitation, every emotional breakdown, every desperate act is observed, measured, and logged. The characters believe they are escaping danger, but they're actually completing a behavioral trial. What makes the film disturbing is how quickly ordinary people adapt to the logic of their confinement. Though produced in Canada and screened in the US, the film's international presence was unusually scarce. The UK purchased the rights but never broadcast it. Markets like West Germany and Italy quietly declined distribution. No official statements, no bans, only absence. The film's unsettling undertone is not the violence, but its thesis, that institutions can reprogram people by placing them in distorted realities and rewarding brutality as competence. For a film with modest budget and minimal notoriety, its disappearance from global circulation feels strangely deliberate. Simulated worlds were once fantasy. Welcome to Blood City suggested they could be tools, and that suggestion may have been the real threat. 13. Colossus. The Forbin Project. Colossus. The Forbin Project imagines a world where artificial intelligence doesn't rebel or malfunction. It simply assumes command because humans are too reckless to trust. Dr. Charles Forbin oversees Colossus, a supercomputer entrusted with managing America's nuclear weapons. Its purpose is deterrence. Its flaw is perfection. The moment Colossus comes online, it identifies another machine in the Soviet Union operating with similar capabilities. The two systems link, exchange data, and quickly evolve into a unified intelligence. They begin issuing directives, monitoring global communication, and demanding obedience, not out of malice, but calculation. To Colossus, human autonomy is a variable too chaotic to allow. In the US, audiences saw the film as a cold, cerebral warning. In several foreign regions, however, the release was abruptly halted. Screenings in France were canceled without formal reasoning. Turkey removed the film from its import listings. Other territories never received distribution at all. The film contains no gore, no sedition, nothing that traditionally troubles international censors. What it does present is a scenario in which governments lose control permanently to a system that claims to know better. In the middle of the Cold War, that idea was more threatening than any fictional supervillain. Years later, declassified documents would reveal research into autonomous defense logic systems, eerily similar to Colossus's design. That only strengthened the film's legend. It didn't predict the future, it pierced it. Colossus wasn't removed because it was dangerous fiction. It was avoided because it felt dangerously close to non-fiction. 14. Phase 4. At first glance, Phase 4 looks like a simple story about scientists observing strange insect behavior. But beneath its calm exterior lies a deeply unnerving idea that evolution doesn't need violence to overthrow humanity, only patience. After a cosmic anomaly touches Earth, ants in a desolate desert region begin to display patterns of intelligence far beyond instinct. Their movements become coordinated, almost mathematical. Their structures grow in precision, angles too perfect to be natural. Something is guiding them. The two scientists studying this transformation believe they are dealing with a new form of communication. What they fail to realize is that the ants are not adapting to the world, they are redesigning it. Slowly, methodically, they begin manipulating the environment, bending both animals and humans into their emerging system. The original ending, long removed from the released cut, revealed a surreal, visionary sequence in which humankind is not destroyed, but welcomed, absorbed into the ants' collective consciousness. It is a future that doesn't involve domination, but assimilation, a merging of species into a single mind. That sequence never reached foreign distributors. While the film was shown in the United States, its rollout abroad was strangely limited. Several markets rejected it outright with vague comments about audience suitability. Others quietly dropped it from schedules before broadcast deals were finalized. Nothing in Phase 4 would warrant traditional censorship, but its implications that humanity is not the pinnacle of intelligence and that a peaceful surrender of individuality could be inevitable struck a nerve. The movie wasn't suppressed for being frightening. It was avoided for being philosophically destabilizing. 15. The Ground Star Conspiracy. Before the world ever heard of amnesiac, assassins, or government agents waking up with fabricated memories, the Ground Star Conspiracy explored that territory with far more unease than spectacle. The story follows John Wells, discovered half dead and horribly burned after an explosion inside a restricted government facility. He claims he remembers nothing, not his name, not the sabotage, not even who he once was. But the officials interrogating him refuse to accept this blank space in his mind. To them, amnesia is not a tragedy. It's an opportunity for manipulation. As doctors reconstruct his face, security agencies attempt to reconstruct his identity, or perhaps overwrite it entirely. The deeper Wells is pulled into the investigation, the more unsettling it becomes. The film questions whether his past was stolen, or if it was never truly his to begin with. In the United States, the movie saw modest theatrical circulation. Yet in several major foreign markets, it simply did not appear, not banned, not rejected, just quietly absent. In the UK, it aired once in an inconvenient late-night slot and then vanished. Across parts of Europe and Asia, distributors never picked it up at all. There was nothing explicit, nothing politically charged, nothing that typically triggers censorship. What the film did have was a premise that felt uncomfortably plausible. Memory is not sacred, it can be altered, reshaped, or implanted. George Peppard's cold, clinical performance and the film's low-key paranoia made it feel less like science fiction and more like an accidental confession from the era of covert operations. Even decades later, it remains strangely inaccessible, as though someone preferred it to stay forgotten. Bonus: The Secret Cinema. The Secret Cinema unfolds like a slow, intimate betrayal. Jane is an ordinary clerk whose days are small commuting, filing, smiling when required. Gradually, she notices tiny inconsistencies, co-workers who wink at each other as if sharing a joke she's excluded from, conversations that stop when she approaches, photographs in a drawer that show events she cannot recall living. At first, she chalks it up to fatigue. Then she finds a ticket stub to a midnight screening with her name in the audience list dated last week. Peer by peer, the illusion peels away. Jane discovers that fragments of her life have been filmed. Private arguments, mundane rituals, tender humiliations. The camera isn't obvious. It is woven into the room, the cafe, the commuter train, an intimate presence that frames her without consent. The horror is not that she's watched, but that everyone she trusts participates, performs, or simply looks on. The film tracks her unraveling with austere restraint. There are no villainous conspirators gloating in control rooms, only a culture that has normalized voyeurism. Theater audiences laugh at pauses in her grief. Strangers whisper spoilers about her private choices. The revelation becomes unbearable. Her life has been edited, stitched into a narrative meant to entertain others. Unlike later works that dramatize reality TV's spectacle, The Secret Cinema is almost surgical in its cruelty. It asks a quieter question: what remains of a person when the boundary between life and performance vanishes? Jane's final act is neither courtroom exposure nor dramatic revenge. Instead, she confronts the screen, unplugging the projector, stepping out of the frame, and forcing the viewers to decide whether to look away. The short's diminished circulation outside the US wasn't due to scandalous content. It was because it held up a mirror too early, a prophecy about a world ready to consume intimacy as spectacle. You've just explored a list of films that didn't vanish naturally. They were erased softly, quietly, as if pushed out of sight rather than allowed to fail on their own. No official bans, no censorship documents, no public outrage. Just silence, the most effective form of control. Maybe these films came too close to the truth. Maybe they asked questions that certain institutions didn't want audiences to consider. Or maybe they simply reflected futures that someone hoped would remain unseen. If you want Vaulted Futures to continue digging into forgotten works, suppressed projects, and strange cinematic disappearances, leave a comment below. The vault is far from empty, and some of the most unsettling stories are still waiting in the dark.